Welcome to the Chamber Spotlight, a local talk show podcast brought to you by the Pembroke Chamber of Commerce in association with the local scene. We'll be recording on a regular basis and we'll cover many topics that span local businesses, local elections, local town governance, and the Citizens Academy. I'm your host, Fraser Townley, and today we're sitting down with Ken Sweezey. Ken, how are you?
Great to be here, Fraser. Thanks.
Terrific. It's also, the date is December the 8th? December the 8th. Before you and I speak, Ken, we're going to cut to the town hall where I recorded Andrea Cesarini doing the town news. So we'll cut there now. Today is December the 8th, and I'm here at Town Hall with Andrea Cesarini. Andrea, you got some town news for us?
I do. So not a lot of meetings this week. Our planning board's meeting tonight, Monday, December 8th. It's a light agenda. This agenda is not going to include the Country Club Weather Vane subdivision application. There's just some site plan updates from 330 Oak Street. Our recycling committee will be meeting this Tuesday, December 9th. A reminder that a majority of these meetings are broadcast on the local scene, Channel 9, and they can be rewatched on the localscene.media/Pembroke/. News around town. Our property tax exemption applications are currently being accepted. For additional information, please contact the assessor's office at 781-293-2393. Veterans tax exemptions are due February 2nd, 2026. All other exemptions are due April 1st, 2026. There are absolutely no exceptions for late applications, so please file accordingly. Our assessor's office are predicting property tax bills will be mailed during the week of the 22nd to the 29th. Please be on the lookout for those. The bill will include the due dates. The Pembroke Public Library is hosting their holiday book sale all month long. Buy a holiday-themed item for half off. They have books, games, music, and crafts. They also have some really cute bundles. So you can check out their Facebook page for some more information or stop into our lovely library. Dog licensing will be open January 1st or potentially sooner as we work with our vendor, City Hall Systems, to get the portal open prior to the new year. The town clerk's office will automatically mail all seniors over 70 their free dog tags. If you are over 70 years old and do not automatically receive your tag and registration in January, please contact the town clerk's office. We may not have your date of birth in our dog licensing system, or your dog's rabies information might not be up to date. We cannot register a dog without current rabies vaccination information. Dogs must be registered by April 1st to avoid a late fee of $15. Annual street listings, or the annual census, will be hitting homes in late December, early January. Households that fail to respond to the annual census by June 1st will result in any registered voters being listed as inactive on the voter registration rolls. Inactive voters are still registered to vote and can still participate in any elections and town meetings, but will need to sign an affidavit of continuous residency when they appear to vote. Households can respond to their street listings online. Please see the town clerk's webpage, annual town census form, to provide an online response. Nomination papers for the May 2026 local election will be available January 2nd. For more information on open seats available, please see the town clerk's webpage, 2026 municipal election open seats. And a reminder for town hall closures for the holiday. We will be closing at noontime on December 24th, reopening Monday, December 29th, closing at 1 p.m. on New Year's Eve, and reopening Friday, January 2nd.
That's terrific. Thanks so much, Andrea. Just go back to the penultimate subject. You're talking about the nominating papers. So they have to be pulled by January the 2nd, or?
No, January 2nd is the first that they are available.
Oh, that's the first date.
Yeah,
right?
It's a date in March, and I can look at my calendar very quickly just to see when they're going to be due. I apologize for not having this at a time. So they would be due Friday, the 27th of March. So the March 25th is the last day for someone to pull, and they would be due back that Friday. And to remind people to pull nomination papers, you just need to be a registered voter of the town of Pembroke. You come to the clerk's office between January 2nd and March 25th. You receive 3 sheets of papers that voters will sign, and you need to have 50 registered voters sign your nomination papers and return them by the 27th, the Friday, March 27th. We will then verify the signatures, and so long as you've received 50 from registered voters of Pembroke, you will be on the ballot.
And so you could pull papers on the 25th of March, provided you have 50 people lined up, and then, bosh, you're on the ballot.
Yep, and we have actually seen that before. So it is very possible to do that.
Okay.
So those will be available January 2nd. If anybody has any questions, you can give us a call, 781-293-7211. Then we do have the open seats that are going to be up for election this year on the town clerk's page on the website. It's on the left-hand side. It's actually the first block on the left-hand side of 2026 municipal election open seats. So that's going to be an interesting.
Well, I
year.
know of one open seat and a candidate that's going to be running for that, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's you.
It is me. I will be pulling the nomination papers. I'm the interim town clerk. I am not elected. I was appointed when Margaret Struzik had to step down in 2024. So it will be my first time running for town clerk. I am an elected constable, but I'm giving that up this year. So that constable seat will be, as of right now, I'm not sure if anybody's going to pull for that, but I'm vacating that seat and I will be pulling for town clerk.
Amazing. Very good. Thanks so much,
Yep.
Andrea. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely.
Great. Welcome back. Ken, let's talk about you. There's no one else in the room. It's just about you. Let's have some background.
Yep.
What's your bio?
Yeah, great. Haven't done this in a while. Out of campaign practice, so thank you. I always appreciate.
Is there anything to campaign for right now?
2-year terms. You're okay. Always. So, but yeah. So I grew up in the district. I grew up in Hanson. My folks are still in town there, so been around a long time. My family owns a small business over in Whitman, so sort of grew up digging fence post holes for my dad.
That's where the muscles come from.
Well, depends who you ask, I guess. So grew up doing that every summer, for what, 6, 7, 8 years through high school and college, did that. Went off to Loyola University, Chicago, where I got my degree in forensic science. I was technical for a little while. I worked for St. Louis Police Department in the crime lab. So I was a fingerprint expert by trade in law enforcement. It was kind of my dream job when I was a young kid. Always kind of thought I wanted to do that, and not a lot of people get to do their dreams. So I was very fortunate. Loved the job. Loved working alongside a lot of great public servants while I was there. Was there up through COVID and decided, it was a little bit of a time for a change, like many people did back in 2020. So started looking for jobs and ended up moving back home in 21. Stayed in the private sector, actually, was there for a little bit, jumped through some biotech and some engineering firms. But really started getting involved. I immediately, once I got back, knew that itch for that public service was still there. So started volunteering in town in Hanson. I was serving on the Economic Development and Capital Improvements Committee over there, which is great. Town government is, as I'm sure you're talking about a lot on this show, and what you're involved in with the chamber is so important, and it can be thankless, and you learn a lot about what it takes to run the town, and people don't realize how much the town government really does affect their everyday life. So it was a really, really great experience. I really enjoyed my time there, met some amazing people that really just, anyone who's involved in town government deserves a big pat on the back. I truly believe that. But from that experience, sort of wanted to do more and decided back in 22 to run for state representative. Obviously ran against our former rep who had served for almost 12 years, came up a little bit short against him in 22. And then fortunately he got appointed by the governor to the Labor Department, took that job. So the seat opened up and decided to take another crack at it in 24 and was able to cross the finish line successfully.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
So a hard worker and a public servant. That's what I got from that.
That's what I'm trying to do.
This is my personal curiosity. I don't know anybody in town that might be interested in this, but you were a forensic. What did you say you were in Chicago?
Yeah, it was, so I got my degree in Chicago, and then I served at the St. Louis Metro Police Department. I was a fingerprint expert in the crime lab.
How did that work during COVID?
It was
that must have been very...
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, as you can imagine, Missouri politics are quite a bit different than Massachusetts politics, so we weren't closed all that long in Missouri. So, the first maybe month we were kind of home and making sure we were cleaning up some admin stuff, but I was right back in the lab pretty shortly. Even in April of 2020, I was back in the lab already.
And so did that inform you about what was going on in the rest of the country? Because I know I was in Florida for a part of COVID, and it weirded me out. I would go to a restaurant and I'd select a table and they'd say, it'll be ready in 10 minutes. You can wait in the bar. And you go in the bar and it's crowded and it's full of people without masks on. And you think, wait, what?
Yeah, going between Missouri and Massachusetts during that time was definitely interesting. It was like, I told people it was like going in a time machine. I'd be going backwards in time from Missouri to Massachusetts, which I think most people would not.
Wait, which was back
say.
in time?
Right,
Massachusetts?
yeah, Massachusetts was back in time to when people wore masks for a little bit. But it was an interesting time for a couple different reasons. Outside of, the COVID stuff, again, my family operates a small business. Unfortunately, construction was deemed essential, so we were able to stay open. But a lot of people that we worked with weren't so lucky. So that really informed a lot of, my views of getting involved after that and being a part of law enforcement at the time too. As we know, we were kind of struggling with some surging in crime before COVID, but it really shone a light and really exploded at that time.
Crime did?
Crime did, yeah. Crime was going up significantly. And, in general, this is true, but it was particularly true in St. Louis that both the victims and the perpetrators were getting substantially younger, which was a disturbing trend. Yeah. So it was, I was working on cases where both victims and perpetrators couldn't even operate a vehicle legally. They were so young. And it was just, it was time
That's
where...
really sad, actually.
Yeah, it was, it was to a point where I felt like I wasn't accomplishing the goal that I set out to. The city was no safer, me working cases. It was a little bit more of a cog in a machine type of feeling. And I there was always, as well as the COVID thing going on, I knew, I got to get to a system level if I'm going to actually enact any positive change to help anybody with some of these problems. So,
Well, thank you for your service. The other thing I wanted to comment on is about the local politics. We on this podcast, keep banging away. We don't understand, the chamber doesn't understand how you can have the majority of the town come out and vote for the national politics, but the local politics, we don't even get 5% coming out and voting.
Right.
And it's crazy because we can affect change. We, the people, can absolutely dictate our livelihoods and the way forward. What do people talk about? They talk about water, they talk about potholes, they talk about all the things that the local government take care of, and yet we don't come out and vote for people. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic, and I say interesting lightly, but it's hard, and I understand, right? You have young families, or, maybe it's a senior with mobility issues. Maybe it's someone who has to juggle ballet class and soccer and PTO meetings and their job. And, I understand you're not going to be able to keep up with every single election. We're going to have one every spring, whether there's a federal election or not that year. It's hard to keep up. We see 50 plus years ago, maybe even less, maybe just a couple decades, everyone read the local papers. There was a paper in every single most towns had multiple papers. That's how you got your news. So you read the paper every day or every week for your town, and you got your news. You were informed. You knew what was going on. People went to town meetings. People showed up to vote. That's just not really as much a part of the culture anymore at the municipal level. And then, as you mentioned, you get 10,000 plus voters in a federal election and only about 2,000 in the town of Pembroke for a municipal election. And I encourage people all the time. That's why I talk about it. And that's why I'm so open to saying, the people that volunteer to do these jobs, you might only see them, at the tree lighting or, someone talking about it when they're running these, more civic-minded organizations. But a lot of the same people are the ones that are running the town as well with really good intentions and doing a lot of hard work. And, we just need to inform people. I think meeting people where they're at, which is why I love programs like this and why I will go on one every day if someone would let me, because it's so important. One person we can reach out to show, hey, this is important if you do want your potholes, your water, anything addressed you have problems with. And, we have our issues in Pembroke like every single town does, and it's important to make sure we keep an eye on those things. So getting people out to vote, getting people involved is so crucial, and why I talk about the municipal stuff all the time.
Terrific. So that's, okay, we've segued nicely because we've done your bio, we've heard your background. Now I wanted to talk about your current role.
Yep.
And understanding. So what is your district?
Yes, so I am the state representative for the 6th Plymouth.
Right.
And so just for everyone's knowledge, there's 160 state reps in Massachusetts. So we each represent districts of roughly 45,000 people. So that would be, for me, the 6th Plymouth is all of Duxbury, most of Pembroke, most of Hanson, half of Halifax,
Wait,
and
when you
one
say
precinct
most
in
of,
Marshfield.
you don't get the whole of Pembroke?
No. Sadly, Precinct 3, which is the Bryantville area, is in the 12th Plymouth, represented by Representative Lenatra.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, so I have 4 precincts and she has 1. So Pembroke is split.
So, I mean, I do find this interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you represent one. Is anybody else represent? So there's only one representative of Pembroke, Duxbury, Hanson, and you're it. I know. I understand that bit. So Duxbury don't have a second. They must have a second.
Nope, Duxbury is all full, so only 1 rep. So everyone will have 1 state representative and 1 state senator.
So Kathy is not. We don't have 2 because we have 2 reps.
Correct.
We just have 2. It's
correct.
The
It's just the way the district lines are drawn is the reason why myself and Rep Lenatra represent different parts.
Okay.
Of Pembroke. But obviously, for the residents that we represent in town, we need the whole town to succeed, right? And that's what I tell everybody.
Of course.
And that's why no matter which one of my towns, you can always reach out to me or Kathy. We'll get together and help with whatever we can.
Yeah. And so Duxbury and Pembroke are 2 very different towns. So
my district's unique because
Yeah.
all of the towns I consider to be very, very different. A lot of the towns on the districts, go north-south. The coastal communities stay together, the inland communities stay together, and they're much more similar.
Yeah.
Mine and Rep Lenatra's is similar to mine, but we have these long east-west districts that create extremely different socioeconomic statuses across the towns. Halifax, Hanson, very different than Duxbury, Marshfield.
Sure.
This sort of gradient that goes across Pembroke even. It's all 5 of my towns are very, very unique. And I mean, I think because of where we are in Plymouth County, there's very much an intense local municipal culture, right? The deep history that we have here in Plymouth County, I think creates sometimes some really hard lines between the towns because of their cultures in general, which is great. Makes them unique and people have a lot of pride in their towns, which is awesome and makes it easy to represent when a lot of people care about the future of their communities. But it is interesting because, like I said, I grew up in Hanson. I grew up digging holes.
Mm-hmm.
That's very different than someone who grew up in Duxbury, who is familiar with shellfishing and things like that. And just being the state representative and running to represent people from all 5 towns and all 45,000 people across, about 20,000 households, there was a big learning curve. And that's really what I've been doing now for, over 4 years, is making sure that I'm understanding all of the issues that everybody is having to the best of my ability across the whole district.
Mm-hmm. Just note, though, they still dig holes in Duxbury as well.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Okay. So talk to me about the floor.
Yep.
What is that? What is that all about?
Yeah, so when I'm up there on Beacon Hill, I'm in the district most days. So a lot of people ask me, "Oh, are you up in Boston every day?" And that's very much not what the job is. I don't look at the job as sort of being the state, if you will. The way I say it is I am a resident down here to bring our thoughts and our ideas to the state. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the district most days doing shows, going to events, things like that. But when I am up in Boston, I'm doing usually one of 2 things. Usually we're in something called formal session, which is where we will be on the floor in the chamber of the House of Representatives voting and debating on issues. So that's when you'll hear, and we may cover some stuff about the budgets or any sort of policy things that are up for a final vote in the House. That's what we'll be doing on the floor, is running that sort of debate and those votes. The other thing I'm doing up there is serving on one of my many committees. So before a bill comes up for a vote, before all the membership, it is filed. It goes through a committee process so that it can be heard. Advocates come in, people that are opposing and advocating for the bill will come in. Before the committee, we can ask questions to the sponsors of the bill, things like that. And then we may, if it gets released from committee, it may go on to additional committees. The House and Senate both need to vote on it. So there's quite a long process, and that's why oftentimes you'll see Massachusetts does not have a great reputation, even amongst state governments, of being a very rapid or efficient process. So most things kind of come down to the second year of that 2-year session. But there is a lot, to our credit, I will say there's a lot to get through. There was 7,000 bills filed this session. 7,000 bills. And if you file a bill on time, it is guaranteed a public hearing. So all 7,000 of those bills have to be within a public hearing. and have their time of day for the public to come and comment on them. So it is quite an arduous process, and which is great because it has its time for advocates and opposition alike to come. But it's that's why it takes quite a long time.
And now I heard something. I just want to get the record straight. You are one of 19 first-timers. I don't know what you're called.
Yes, that is correct. There are 19 freshman legislators in the House.
Freshmen, okay.
Yep.
And how many of those freshmen have actually stood up on the floor and presented a bill?
To date, there's now been 3.
And you're one of those 3?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
How many, so beyond the freshmen,
Yep.
how many have actually ever gone on the floor?
Oh, man. It's so there is a steep tradition around making your inaugural speech your first time debating on the floor. The speaker doesn't always preside over the session, but the speaker will come and preside over your session for your first time to address the membership. And actually, all 159 other members will come and greet you after you complete your speech. Very cool tradition to be a part of. So a lot of people try to go through that at least once, but there have been many members that have retired after decades having never done it.
There you go.
That does happen. And even now, I mean, through the first year, I bet there's probably been less than 40 different individuals that have spoken on the floor. It's not, unfortunately, I would say the Massachusetts House doesn't have the most robust debate all the time. Unfortunately, I'd like to see a little bit more, but I think that's part of what I'm trying to bring to the body.
Just from a personal point of view.
Yeah.
Is it nerve-wracking?
Public speaking for me doesn't really bother me. Right. I actually find it fun. Okay. Personally.
No, I do too, but I would imagine it's a different kind of public speaking.
Certainly, the first time I certainly felt the gravity of the moment, and the room looks different from that angle. I'll say that. When you're in the crowd of 160 members and you're all looking up front, you get used to that real fast. But when you're up at the front and looking at
you've gone from spectator to player.
Yes. So the speaking itself was totally fine, but it's definitely, while you're being recognized by the Speaker of the House from, a building that's 225 years old for the Commonwealth that's 250 plus years old. And, the gravity of the moment, especially being a little bit of a history nerd myself, certainly hits, with the murals around you and everyone looking at you and everything. But it's the substance that mattered. And I was happy to be able to speak on something that was important to the district.
I think it's amazing that you are only one of 3 out of 19 and even more. You said 100, how many? 160?
Yep.
So that's a huge achievement, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so background, what you do, that's great. We've got some topics.
Of course.
The one that struck me that you had some comment on that I heard you, I'm poaching from what you said on WATD, but the electric.
Yep.
In actual fact, you can promote. You're doing something tonight, aren't you? You're going to a forum.
Yeah, so there's been some active members of the community, which has been great here in Pembroke and previously in Duxbury, but still a group that you can find on social media. So even by the time this airs, you won't be able to make the forum, which is happening, the big group at the community center, just to prepare for.
Is it being recorded?
That I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think so. But the fire chief will be there to talk about it, and I believe he's going to be next week. So when you do hear this recording, December 15th is the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. I encourage everybody, if you read up on the issue or would like to learn more, the meeting will be at the community center because there's such going to be high turnout for this meeting.
Yeah.
And this is going to be around that battery.
But that will also be, I think that one will be filmed.
That one will definitely be.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you can watch that live.
Yeah, because that's a public meeting.
Right.
From
of
the
course.
Town. Yep.
Okay.
So, but this is all around the battery energy storage systems and what's going on. There's citing a potential project over on 139 behind the Knights of Columbus in Pembroke.
Yeah. So, first of all, this all started in Duxbury. There was a Duxbury battery farm. Did you get involved in, because that's been defeated, right? That's no longer.
Yep. So my involvement in this sort of thing started, just a couple months ago because there was another project that was similar in some ways over in Duxbury. The battery farms have been going on for a few years now in Massachusetts because it's part of an energy law that was passed back in 2023. And essentially these battery farms were deemed more synonymous legally with like solar panels and other renewable energy. So there was a project that was going into a residential zone right off of Route 3 in Duxbury that ended up getting a lot of community pushback. What was unique over there was the select board was against it. The planning board voted no. The ZBA voted no. So because there's a law, however, about batteries specifically, the company sued the town and won in land court.
Oh.
And they all these companies cite the exact same law that basically says you cannot exclude these projects just because they're battery farms. Even if you have bylaws on them, they're not really valid after 2023. And most towns don't even have bylaws on them because it's a newer technology.
Yeah.
Fast forward a little bit, there was a lot of community pushback. There was a select board meeting where the company was invited. That meeting went on. I was in attendance, probably went on 3+ hours. I spoke for a few minutes as well, just to talk about the legislation, which we can get into as well, that I'm co-sponsoring around battery farms. And the company decided to pull out from there. And that's why I encourage everybody to be involved in this stuff. Batteries specifically right now as we're talking about it, but really everything at the municipal level, the involvement is just so important, whether it's your elected officials or corporations that are trying to do projects in town. It's really important that everybody knows where you stand on things, and I can never plug that involvement enough. But so the project in Duxbury has since been canceled, really due to that pushback. And that was great because it was going, I mean, this project was in my opinion, really ill-conceived. It was about 200 feet from private residences. Like I could literally see kids' playgrounds. While I took a tour of the site. You could see these homes, residential zone. I mean, nobody wanted this thing, and the town said no. And this is, in my opinion, sort of along the lines of what the state has been doing with a lot of different policy positions, just like they did with MBTA zoning. It's all stick and no carrot, and I don't understand why they're taking that approach, because it's not necessary. There's a lot of communities that are on board with these sort of things, or just on board, and there's many more that would be on board if you gave us more say in our communities. It's almost to the point where why do we even have municipal governments at all if the state's just going to say, oh, well, your bylaws can be forgotten because we're just going to seek these policy ends anyway. So that's what happened in Duxbury. We obviously now have the project in Pembroke, a little bit different because it was initially approved by the planning board. I mentioned that ZBA meeting, the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, that'll be happening December 15th. That is actually a continuation of their meeting that they had. So they're already about 1 to 2 hours into debate on this. The company was there, residents were asking questions. And as I said, there's an organized group against it. So I encourage anyone who wants to be involved in that group or just learn more to go. They're very active on Facebook with Stop Batteries in Pembroke, I believe is their name. And you can find more information there. Look at the recording from the last ZBA meeting. But this is definitely a big deal for Pembroke.
So as the Chamber of Commerce, we're obviously encouraging business. We're encouraging industry. So we wouldn't want to just flatly deny any company that wanting to settle in Pembroke. My issue, well, before I talk, you've got some legislation that you're pushing through, so let's talk about that. Yeah,
so there are 3 bills that I co-sponsored. So this was actually spearheaded by one of my colleagues out in Western Mass because they had a similar situation as what happened in Duxbury. They had someone come in, they went through the courts, got approved, and the community pushed back and the company pulled out. So, but the bills have a few different ends. One would be a 1-year moratorium on any new battery permits that would accompany a study, which I think would be a good start. We're not at the point right now. And one thing to step back on, a lot of people, why these batteries? Where is this coming from? Why is this happening? To be clear, this is connected to the policy goals of the state of Massachusetts. These batteries, if you go over a certain percentage of renewables on your grid, these batteries actually are necessary because the renewables are not always reliable. Wind only works when the wind blows. The solar only works when the sun shines. So you need the batteries because right now you can just throw more coal in the fire and get more electricity. You can pump in more gas and have more electricity. You can't dictate those terms as much with renewables. So the reason that these battery farms are popping up is because we have these 20 2030 and 2050 goals in Massachusetts, which aren't just regulations or pie in the sky ideas like they are in most states. These are actually written into statute. The state is legally obligated to follow these things. Now, there's some hope that those might get changed. They can get changed through the process. There was a bill that was going to be up. And unfortunately, we didn't end up taking a vote on it before the end of this year. And I'm hopeful that some version of it will still come out to sort of revise these guidelines to something that's just a little bit more realistic at this time. Just the fact of the matter is we're too far off pace. We can't possibly make it to our 2030 goals at this point without crushing the average consumer. Now, with that background, again, to those...
I don't think you can hit the goals.
No, the goals can't be hit.
They can't be hit.
No, they cannot be hit. It's impossible.
You can't fly a plane.
Yeah.
You can't shift cargo.
Right.
There's so many things you cannot do.
Right.
But we're not getting political.
Right. Of course. We wouldn't do that. So the bills, again, a 1-year moratorium, I think that would be a good thing to do with the study. Figure out what these batteries really can do. A big problem is we don't really know what's going to happen to the waste. These batteries are so big, they create physical waste, almost like the power plants would, not to the same degree, but they do create physical waste. These batteries only have a lifespan of about 7 to 10 years on average right now, yet these leases are for 20, 30 years sometimes on these sites. What are we going to do with the waste? No plans on that yet. So again, making sure this study's done to make sure, safety's up to snuff and what's going to happen to the waste is a really big concern. The second bill would create some mandatory setback restrictions. Say, I think in that bill it has a 2,000-foot buffer zone around the battery from any occupied residence. That's a good start. Also some fire suppression, minimum qualifications, because really the problem with these batteries is if they catch fire, there's no way to put them out.
That's true. This is actually part of my industry.
Yep.
I do understand the batteries. I do understand why the Samsung Note 7 was pulled off the marketplace. I do understand why and how lithium-ion batteries work and why they were failing and why they will never fail again. So we've moved heaven and earth, and it's private sector.
Right.
It's not public money. It's private money. Apple, Samsung, all of these companies worked out why the batteries were catching fire. And they worked out that I keep my phone in my pocket all the time. If phones were a risk of catching fire, that would be nowhere near my body. And yet I keep it in my pocket and I don't think about it. I don't think about it because it's been worked on, it's been fixed. So I don't think the fire risk is the big issue here. The big issue here for me is something that you haven't said, but I have heard you say it.
Yep.
And that is we've created a law, a statute that makes this renewable energy storage,
right?
And yet, I don't think they're all being used for renewable energy.
Right.
They're being used for gain.
Yes. So the idea, right, as I kind of noted why the batteries are necessary more generally for the amount of renewables that are on the grid. So when the law was written, that sort of loophole, if you'll call it, the thing that the companies are using in the courts, because you would really put these batteries often on site with land, wind, or solar panels.
Right.
That's not what's happening with these batteries at all.
No.
What they're doing now is just hooking these batteries up directly to the grid. So what happens is during really low demand times, think usually, overnight or even in the middle of the day when everyone's at work, no one's at home using their electricity, they pull power off the grid. They buy electricity at its cheapest. And then, when everyone's waking up 6, 7, 8, 9 a.m. to get ready for work, or when they're cooking dinner and everyone's home, they're selling the electricity back into the grid at its most expensive.
Exactly. And how is that good for the residents?
Right.
How is that good for the consumer?
Yeah. So in theory, right, the argument is, well, if you have this extra stored electricity and you're selling it back at peak, it would nominally reduce the cost because you'd have extra electricity going into the grid that you could ramp up. Now, when you spread that over the whole community, no one is able to provide those numbers, which I've had a huge problem with, to say, hey, this will be the cost savings for you. No one has that number. It's a business model that I think is really tough to swallow for a lot of people right now, especially as we go into the winter and their utility bills are skyrocketing, and you just hear about these giant companies that are going to come in, clear cut a bunch of the woods, put this giant facility on the North River, buy cheap electricity, and sell you expensive electricity. That's really tough.
That is profiteering from another man's misery, which I am deadly against.
Right.
Why isn't the state telling the what do they call them? Utility companies.
Right.
Why isn't the state insisting the utility companies get your own battery storage and put it in your own backyard?
Yeah. So this is a little bit more speculation on my part, I will admit, Fraser. But so the problem with a lot of these companies, and the company was called New Leaf over in Duxbury, and they openly admitted it during an open meeting, and I'm not sure the rep was supposed to. And I suspect that it's a very similar situation over in Pembroke, although I have not officially confirmed this yet. Many of these companies that come to your public meetings talk about the safety of these batteries, how they're going to site it, what the fire suppression might be, how they're not affecting the wetlands. None of them plan on operating these sites. The business model, not only is there that business model for the operator to buy cheap electricity and sell it expensive, but for a lot of these bigger companies or even the operators, smaller companies that you might not be familiar with, they don't want the hassle of doing the environmental review. They don't want the hassle of going to the public meetings and pulling permits. The company over in Duxbury flatly admitted during a public meeting, oh yeah, we won't be the ones operating this.
Oh.
So very rare is it that you have a company that's actually going to go from start to finish. So that's another big problem when they're talking about, oh, well, it's this safe. It's going to do this much for your electricity. How do they know? They're not even going to be the ones operating it.
I'm looking at the bigger picture,
yeah.
Ken.
So there is one site that Eversource does own. There's a battery farm in Provincetown that they own. From my research, that was the only one I could find that Eversource directly operates. But all these other ones, I mean, there's one in Carver that's been operational now for a couple months. All these small, and they're all like Carver Energy LLC or Duxbury Energy LLC, and you got to track these things down.
But if these private companies can afford the batteries, there's obviously enough fat.
Yeah.
And that fat should be going to the residents, the users of the electricity.
Right.
And it's a little bit baffling to me.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about on that subject? So we've got the meeting tomorrow. You're going to be tonight. You're attending the meeting tonight. So I better not waffle on. Let's move on to the next subject.
Yeah. And we'll see you December 15th for the ZBA meeting.
For sure. 100%. Although I have to say, we have to tone it down a little bit as well. The ZBA meeting's a business meeting.
100%.
And, we don't want, and I don't want to be critical of anybody who's going, but be there as an observer. Don't waste time talking about your own feelings about the issue. Leave the feelings up to the people that are paid to or are responsible for that.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with making your voice heard to your public officials. The ZBA are not the ones that are building the batteries. So to your point, it's not, their fault. They're doing their job.
Yeah.
So they're there to listen to their constituents just as much as I would be for anything. So go make your voice heard within the, respectable, rules of the meeting. And yes, absolutely a business meeting, but turnout's always a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. But I also think the state can do some.
Oh, the state has a lot of work to do.
It's their rules that are being.
No, I agree.
I've got my opinion. I've shared it with you. My opinions, by the way, on that particular subject are not the opinions of the Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
They're the opinions of Fraser Townley, MBTA.
Yes.
You've been vocal on the MBTA because it affects most of your towns.
Yep.
And some of your towns have gone for it, like Pembroke. Well, we haven't gone for it. Did we go for it? I think we just happened to.
You voted
conform.
yes, and you're in compliance with the
We're
MBTA
in compliance, but we didn't change anything that we do.
You adopted a new bylaw.
We made it a right as opposed to
right.
But I mean, we had looked at the land and we'd said, okay, we'll make that for 40B and stuff like that, and then the MBTA laws came along and we adopted those laws because we were already in compliance. So we didn't acquiesce to anything as a town, whereas other towns you're looking at me as if I'm talking nonsense.
Just listening.
But you had other towns that were being forced to do things. They had to acquiesce to the state and they pushed back. Were they right to push back?
Yeah, I think this, similar to what I said about the battery farms, right, being jammed down a municipality's throat when the town didn't want it. There's plenty of places that do want these things. There's plenty of municipalities that are begging for housing, even high-density housing all along the MBTA, more so, the subway system, the Red Line, the Green Line and such. But, our communities down here are not those communities that high density really works for. We have a lot of problems. We're not a part of the Massachusetts, water, the water resource area, excuse me. So we have water problems. We have PFAS contamination. I mean, before we tied into some other communities, back when I ran the first time, we almost had to shut the town water off back in the summer of 2022 during that horrible drought. As you already alluded to, road issues, higher density is not going to solve any of the problems. It's only going to exacerbate them. So that's a big concern.
Yeah.
When the state comes and says you need to have this density allowable by right. Big problem, in my opinion. So I think it was right for the towns to push back and not only to disagree, but to say, we have sovereignty as a town in Massachusetts. We believe we can set our own destiny. We can set our own laws. That's why we have municipal government. And I think for some people, it was a principle thing. And I didn't blame them at all. And why I took a hard stance is at the time I was elected, 4 out of my 5 towns were non-compliant with the MBTA Communities Act. It was it was a mandate. If people paid attention on the campaign trail, I talked about it all the time, and everyone was pretty much in agreement. And even the towns that have since approved a bylaw, which now 4 out of my 5 towns are in compliance, Duxbury, Hanson, and Marshfield have all since begrudgingly, after all on their second, and Marshfield was on their third vote to accept it at a town meeting, have gone into compliance. Halifax is the only one that is still out of compliance with no plans to vote. They'll remain out of compliance there. But so I understand the principal aspect. I understand the density aspects.
Wait, doesn't Halifax have an MBTA station?
They do.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So it makes sense for them to be in compliance.
I would disagree.
Okay.
I would disagree with that. Just because they have a station doesn't mean that they can support high density housing. And that's really what the law
a fair point.
does. So there's definitely a distinction. Duxbury and Marshfield were different because they were what are deemed adjacent communities. So
Correct.
They were made to comply with this even though they had no MBTA service in their town.
Right.
So that was an issue. When I submitted a host of bills around this topic as well, one of the bills was specifically just to exempt adjacent communities because they're getting no benefit and all the blame, really.
Right.
A little bit different for what we were trying to look at with Hanson and Halifax that do have stations.
Yeah.
And were non-compliant at the time. So, I think that the towns certainly had a right to do it. I think that the towns really, as I've been saying, are sort of under siege from their sovereignty, right? And not to sound so philosophical or political philosophy there, but it is an issue that is going on. The unfunded mandates, we see it. It's not just in MBTA zoning and battery farms, but it's the same thing that's happening with Chapter 90, which is your road funding, and Chapter 70, which is your school funding. We're not getting nearly enough funds from the state. We're looking at all these overrides and all the communities around Pembroke. I'm sure Pembroke will be victim to an override in the next couple years as everyone really is, as enrollment falls and cost per pupil skyrockets. It's a really, really big problem. And most of the time, what's unfortunate, the way I talk about it with everybody, because you go to these town meetings if you're involved. Likely if you're listening to the Chamber of Commerce podcast, you probably go to town meeting. There's a big overlap, I think, there.
I'm not sure.
If you're there, some of these override battles and funding, it's really brutal. And it really is disheartening for me because it's one of those rare times, especially anything tangentially political, where really nobody's wrong. You have half the people that are there that might be seniors on a fixed income that have been in town for decades or their whole life, or maybe they just moved to town, but they don't have the resources for these large tax increases that are going to come from overrides on your property taxes. But you also have young families that have chosen a school system that's right for them, or they're a second or third generation. They're really proud to make sure that their son or daughter is a Titan as well, and they just want to make sure that their children are well educated. Neither of those two things are wrong.
No.
And yet those people are forced to fight each other for where they think their standing is. It really, really bothers me. And this is why I feel so passionately about the state budget, which can really seem like a banal thing at times, and numbers and spreadsheets, and it's not. because that directly correlates to what happens in our town meetings and our budget fights and our override votes. And that's why I am really vocal about this, because it really honestly gets me fired up, because it's a state problem. And I'm not going to say that no one has ever mismanaged a municipal dollar. That would be a ridiculous statement. But, a lot of times people do want to point at some of the big line items in a town budget. And sure, you can always, look for places to be fiscally responsible. And I obviously advocate for that. But really the heart of the problem, the roots of it are deep on Beacon Hill.
Again, this isn't the chamber view. This is the FT view.
I'm going to get you in trouble before this is over.
No. Because I've said what I'm about to say to you, I've said before, privately or publicly. I don't think we are getting what we're putting in. We're not getting our share. And I think one of the biggest issues we have is Pembroke doesn't have big box retail. It doesn't have car showrooms. It doesn't have big furniture. All the big ticket items we don't buy from Pembroke. We buy from neighboring towns, right. Hanover in particular, but Kingston and Plymouth and what have you. So a lot of the revenue that's generated by our town is not attributed to our town. And therefore, when we come and argue what we should get back from state, we're not arguing with the correct number. We should be arguing with a much higher number. We should be saying, Pembroke folks spend this much money on cars. They spend this much money on sofas, this much money on large, big screen TVs. Where do you buy your big screen TV from? It's not Pembroke.
Right.
And so computer. I mean, everyone has a computer. Mobile phone. Where's the mobile phone store in Pembroke? There isn't one. And so all of this revenue that we're spending is going into, there's sales tax on it, and it's going into the exchequer or whatever it's called in, what's the finance department in the state called? I'm a Brit, so I'm calling it the exchequer.
Oh.
It's the state money. Yeah. We're not getting our share back because you can't calculate our share.
Right.
We have to find a better way of calculating and shouting for what we deserve. Duxbury's going to be the same.
Yeah.
Where do you buy your car in Duxbury?
Yeah. Most of my communities are the same, where they're very non-commercial. Yeah.
Good. So we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
Good. We've agreed on everything so far, so that's fine. You said something brilliant on that. Another thing that's close to my heart. Your Duxbury. So Duxbury Beach, Duxbury car vouchers. What do you call them?
There's
the passes.
Yep, the sticker holders for the oversand vehicle access.
Yeah, but you can never get a vehicle on there because of the plumbers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big problem. I find myself in all the fun issues. I feel like batteries and MBTA
well, it's
zoning.
Affecting me. It's an issue I care about.
100%.
I want to put my car on the...
Yeah, I mean, that's I'd say easily the number one local issue. And it goes beyond Duxbury. 50% of sticker holders are from outside of the town of Duxbury.
I would imagine a lot come from Pembroke.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. So the issue over there is that due to the way that environmental regulations are being deciphered, if you want to say, or enforced, the rules have not changed in decades, yet the enforcement has changed dramatically in the last 5 years to the point where there's very, very few days.
There's no days.
There's essentially, yes, very few days.
Yeah, it's raining that day.
Right, exactly, that you can actually get your vehicle. And this is something that's very traditional in Duxbury that's been going on for people that may not visit the beach much or have a sticker. It's, I mean, hundreds of years, since cars were around, people were driving their cars onto Duxbury Beach. It's a very deep tradition in town and for the South Shore and Plymouth County, and it's being limited for, I would argue, arbitrary reasons. There's, of course, I mean, I love our beaches. I grew up, in the woods in Hanson. I care deeply about our environment, but this is not a this or that situation, a black and white situation where it's like, oh, you either save the plovers or you get access. It's not that at all. There's also some other bird species that are being used that only have state designations instead of the federal.
I like that. You made a point.
Yep.
Is it a bill you're putting through, or is it just?
Yeah, so I have filed 3 bills now related to Duxbury Beach. There's a theme. I don't like something, I just start filing bills. So, because then it gets a public hearing and people can participate in the process. And that's really important. Another theme you'll always hear, I'm going to ask, right? Everyone who hears this be like, oh, nice. I get to go on Duxbury Beach again. Well, you better be testifying at the hearing about these bills. You know, you can write in, you can testify virtually, or you can go to the State House and testify in person. 3 ways that can really work for any person. So I really encourage, and there's always, if you want to find more information on my website or my social, I'm always posting when those public hearings are and encouraging people to participate. But yeah, I have 3 bills that have to do with updating the regulations, some that will outright just allow oversand access when they're not federally protected species, and making sure that we're using all tools in the toolkit essentially without getting too deep in the weeds on the federal regulations to make sure that people can enjoy the beach and there's a balance of recreation and conservation.
Sure. No, I liked what you had to say. I'm praising it, but I liked the fact that you, if I've got it right, you're saying if it's federally protected, you respect that.
Yeah.
But if it's not federally protected, I mean, it's the same in England. We go crazy over osprey. Yeah. Osprey's got to be protected. They're all over here. We've got plenty of osprey.
Yeah. Right. So, when we understand the way that they typically do it is through a large region. So they're looking at the plovers over the whole Northeast.
Is that right? I've always called them plovers. It's plovers, is it? Okay.
I say plovers.
No, you can correct me. It's fine.
If I only get to correct you once, I'm not going to use it on that. So.
Oh.
Yeah, so the way they do the federal protections is regional. So we're just, again, all we're asking, if we're going to have to conform to stricter ones about birds that are doing healthy here, well, then we shouldn't be overburdened by what I would consider arbitrary state regulations on birds that are not endangered in totality. So,
great. That's 3 bills, 1 bird. Is that correct?
Yeah, a couple different birds. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other bills that you want to talk about?
Oh, there's a whole host. There's some other stuff. They're not all, controversial, if you will. I've got a couple things that I do that.
I'm not. Look, do you feel I'm trying to be controversial?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. It's I just like to be in the fight.
I was about to go there. You said something recently about immigration, and how the hotels have stopped.
Oh, yes.
But now the money's been siphoned, gone somewhere else. So we've gone from, I think the figure is 14,000. It was 1,400. 1,400, okay.
Yep, and now is 9,000.
Right.
And what those numbers refer to, so this was during a supplemental budget that we did just about a month ago now.
Yep.
So we have to close out when we do a fiscal year budget. There's regularly programs that, we may not have the perfect amount in the account, so we need to allocate some more funds. That's a relatively normal process.
Yeah.
This supplemental to close out the year was a little bit larger. There was 2 big things in there. One, this was a $2.3 billion supplement to last year's fiscal year.
That's more than just a supplement.
Right. That's a lot of money, in my opinion. 1.6 of it went to Mass Health. Massive overages that are happening in our Mass Health program. I truly believe that is going to become, it's already over 50% of our budget. We have a $61 billion budget, and more than half of that goes to Mass Health. Completely unsustainable. And that's a whole topic.
So $30 billion Mass Health bill.
Yep.
The Massachusetts residents, or the Massachusetts taxpayers, because it's not just residents, it's businesses as well, are funding a $30 billion.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah, and just 25 years ago, that was our entire state budget. And just in 20 years.
Okay. What are we spending in Massachusetts on healthcare? Because that's the stuff that the state is funding.
Right. That doesn't include just Medicare that's coming straight from the feds that the state isn't managing, and private insurance.
And then the private insurance must be a greater number. No?
I would have to look. I would think so, but I'd have to look. We have Mass Health is in Massachusetts. We have one of the highest utilizations of public health care in the country. So our percentage of those that are on Mass Health is much higher than it is in other states that run similar programs. But
does that include DDS?
I would have to look.
Okay. Because I know we're very generous with DDS.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that's a bad thing. I'm on the board of New England Village, so it's like 85% of our residents are on DDS.
Right.
So, I see DDS being put to very, very good use.
Yep.
So I don't have a problem with DDS. I do have a problem with DDS abuse.
Right.
And I think that's what you're about to
yeah.
start coming on to.
Yep. Yep. And I know I went on a tangent there on mass health, but I wanted to get back to your question on immigration too. Because, we saw, especially here in Pembroke, because we had hotels that were being operated down in Kingston and in Rockland. So we had two very close. We saw our neighbors struggling with this because it was just a large influx of kids into the schools, public safety departments being called to a place where you wouldn't want anybody to be living out of a hotel, right? That's right. Not adequate to raise a family or for people that might be on hard times, whatever the situation might be, you wouldn't want that for anybody. So it was unfortunate that happened as long as it did. The hotels did close back in July, which is great. But what happened, and what I alluded to, I actually offered an amendment, and I spoke on this on the floor once again during our supplemental budget debate, because there's no accountability for what's happening. What we're doing is we're just shifting the dollars from these hotel shelters, these temporary shelters, into rental assistance. Right. So we had, the governor at the time put a 7,500 family limit on the hotels. Those close. And what did we just say earlier? We went from 1,400 to 9,000. Can you do quick math, Fraser?
Yes,
That's 7,600 families.
That's the bit that
spot
struck
on.
me.
That is spot on, the identical number that we closed the hotels, and now we have those people in direct rental assistance. So nobody left. Those people are still getting assistance from the state, and people that are Massachusetts residents, actual Massachusetts residents that are on hard times. No, this program's been around for decades. No one is talking bad about the regular right to shelter program, but there's an abuse element here. There is a lot of funding. This is what now, over $3 billion just on housing, not including transportation, meals,
a year?
And healthcare. A year, $1 billion. $1 billion a year. So it's been, the shelter crisis has really taken off in the last 2 to 3 years. It's been almost $3 billion just in the housing component.
Right.
Mass health is catching some of these people. Transportation, the auditor just released a report that the state gave a contract to a black car service. Yet we have our regional transits like GATRA driving around with empty buses, but the state was paying over $100 per ride for black car service to go between the hotels. There's a little bit of mismanagement going on with some of these programs here. And
there's a better way of doing it,
and
for
this
sure.
is why people, again, get so passionate and contentious over these issues, because it doesn't have to be this way. The state is mismanaging the money. And then again, we still have overrides and Chapter 70 funds coming up short while we're paying $100 a ride for people that are staying here. It's just not right. So we need to get some of this under control. We need to make sure there's accountability in this shelter program. And not for nothing, if we had 9,000 less families, or just say the 7,500 less families, those are 7,500 rental units that would be available to people that are here in Massachusetts when we're struggling for housing. So, I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. So we need to get this under control, and that's why I was speaking about it during the supplemental budget debate.
Well spotted. So I've got budgets here. This is my next subject. I think you've covered it.
Yeah, that was a good portion on the supplemental there. Yeah, and the regular, we got through a lot.
Yeah. Well, the other point I wanted to make about the budgets was the point I made earlier about we're not getting our fair share. And I'm going to be parochial and say Pembroke's not getting their fair share. But when I think about the bigger picture and the argument that I'm making, that same applies to Duxbury. Yeah. And I think it applies to all of your towns. Oh,
certainly all of my towns. I'd say almost the entire South Shore, all of Plymouth County almost is really not getting back. The way a lot of these, because these are really long, complicated formulas where they do this gymnastic, arithmetic that directs these dollars into. I think it's exactly that. It's gymnastics. So, it is. It's not. It's looking for an argument to say no. Right. The answer is no. Right. Right. Exactly. The answer is no. Let me come up with an argument. I can't swear, can I? I did sign a contract to say I wouldn't, but you can do. Tell me, so there's one other thing that I wanted to ask you about. I had heard that you want to do something with, we've just recently had a Second Amendment change, or we've introduced new laws. Yes, in the state of Massachusetts. So not a Second Amendment change. It's not, exactly. It was connected to the Second Amendment. English host, folks. Just well, give them grace here. Here's the key. I come from a country that believes that abolition is the right way to control guns. I do not agree with that. I have an LTC license. I have several guns. I'm a member of the local gun club, and I shoot bullets out of my gun.
So I'm very much on the side. Where do I sit? I agree with the Second Amendment.
Yep.
But there's been a new regulation come in, and you're appealing that, or you're fighting that. Is that correct?
Yes.
I just want to get that right.
Yep.
Okay.
So this will actually be on your ballot in November.
Okay.
The repeal of Chapter 135, as it's called, that's
next November.
Yes, next November. So in about 11 months from now,
Right.
that's just the Mass General Law numbers, Chapter 135 in the general laws.
Yeah.
It had the bill number. You probably saw the signs that it was like Stop HD4 something last year.
Well, they changed it as well, so that a lot of signs got printed that had to be.
Yeah, weird how that happens. But
Yeah.
So it will be on your ballot. You can do a referendum on any law we pass. If you get over, say, I believe it's 75,000 signatures, it's very similar to how you'd get a regular ballot question on, which we have a lot of next year. So I encourage people to read up on those before we vote in November. But it will be on the ballot to repeal 135. They got over 100,000 signatures.
Wow.
Way above what they needed. And what they did there is they actually passed a threshold that automatically paused the law, except for the governor then retroactively went in and signed an emergency declaration that that overrode the constitutional signature gathering process and put the law into effect immediately, which was very disappointing. It was very disappointing after the signatures were being collected and it was clear they were going to clear the benchmark.
So what is it about? So I think I understand what the law is that they enacted. Yep. But what is it about the law that you're upset about?
Yeah, so the law is very, very long. It changes dozens and dozens of parts of our gun laws.
Right.
There's a handful of them that I highlight for their ridiculousness. One is that they changed the coursework or certain topics you needed to take during your coursework. And the Mass State Police...
This is every year?
No, this was when you were getting your license. Okay. So for new people getting FIDs or LTCs in the state of Massachusetts, the coursework they require now in the law that's currently enacted, the state police does not have the curricula invented yet. Still, a year after the law has been signed into law.
Now, are they just being resistance fighters and dragging their feet?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's impractical. Some people estimated that if they tried to enact everything, the course would go up over 40 hours.
Oh.
Yeah, it's some extreme
right
stuff.
Now it's about 2.5, isn't it?
Yeah, if you take the full, like a lot of people will do the NRA classes as well that go up to about 8 hours. I think the class I took was 6 or 8 hours long.
Right, okay.
I think 2 is probably close to what the state police
No,
requirement.
I think you're probably right, actually.
Yeah, it was about a full day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this would make it basically untenable for the average person.
Right.
To get an LTC. And in my opinion, that was the goal. So the training requirements are a big thing. They really limited some hunting. So Western Mass, Central Mass has a really great culture of hunting. And a lot of people will come up from Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York. That is basically illegal now. You can't do that. The requirements that you need. There was a gentleman that was arrested for possessing a gun while he was driving through Massachusetts. And yet you have, I believe it's up to a week to declare that you're in the state with a firearm, but he was driving through and was stopped and was put in jail. There's some real dire consequences for this.
Aren't there reciprocal arrangements with most of our neighboring states? So if you've got an LTC in Massachusetts, you're covered in...
It depends on the state. A lot of states, because Massachusetts won't accept theirs, even though ours, you would say, is quote unquote more restrictive. So you would think if the requirements are harder, then that would qualify you to have another state's license. But because we don't accept theirs, as if with anything political, they get petty, so they don't accept ours because we won't accept theirs.
Right.
So actually, in a lot of places, the licenses don't cross over for Massachusetts. So it depends. Like you could go to New Hampshire; it's a constitutional carry state, so you don't have to worry about silly licenses. But I digress. So the training.
There's a law in London, and it's an old, 16th century law. Gentlemen must carry a sword.
That makes sense.
Must carry a sword.
That makes sense.
If you carried a sword, you'd be done.
Well, in London, everyone is carrying a sword.
Little blades, but yes. Sorry. So, what else are you upset about?
There's some restrictions on Sunday days of the week on hunting that are relatively arbitrary. The list constantly changes about what you can and can't own. It's relatively arbitrary. So that was changed once again. So there's a handful of things. I think I offered up eight different bills.
But there were also other things that I thought made sense. So you couldn't be intoxicated when carrying a gun. Is that correct?
You never could be intoxicated and possess a firearm. That's illegal everywhere.
Right, but didn't they make that?
That was already.
Was that already there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other one was just higher background checks to stop people, I don't know, criminals being able to get a gun. I actually think that's a good thing, but I mean, I don't know the details as you know them.
Yeah, you'd have to define what higher background checks is. We already perform background checks well before this law. Background checks were already occurring.
That's what I thought. So I was getting confused as to why we needed the new law to come in. And then once I read, and I read the Cliff Notes, I didn't read the detail that you've read. But then when it came into law, I couldn't understand why people wanted it repealing because it kind of made sense to me. But what you're saying is making a lot more.
Yeah. Mostly unnecessary
what you're
and
saying.
absolutely arbitrary.
Right. And you think that's the states moving towards the British model of abolition?
I mean, I think there's plenty of people in the state government right now that would love that. There's no way that you'll ever be able to get there now with the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
One, with the composition that it has, but any unbiased Supreme Court would not allow abolition in any state.
Yeah.
But there's certainly people up there that talk that way. So, but
I don't get it because I don't think it works. I think the violence in London is far greater than anything you would see in the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
My parents live in a rural town similar to Pembroke. They lock 2 sets of doors coming into their home, and then they hide the keys because people can just break a skylight and grab the keys. And I mean, it's just ridiculous, the crime rate and the kind of crimes that are occurring in England. I personally had my car stolen or broken into on 8 different times and my home broken into twice in London. Here, I'm not going to say on there, but we don't lock our doors. It's insane.
Yeah.
I love the security that you have here. And I'm fairly convinced that a lot of that is to do with the criminally minded person doesn't know if I'm carrying.
Right.
So isn't going to take the risk. Anyway, again, this is not the opinion of the Chamber of Commerce. Okay, this has been great. We are well over time, but I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping. Tell me what's your vision? Do you have a vision that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when people ask me this, right, it's a little nebulous right now because I think Massachusetts has such a long way to go on some things. I mean, genuinely, I would love, as I alluded to earlier in the show, I would love for honest, spirited, both sides debate, 2-party rule in Massachusetts. I think it keeps both parties honest because every problem that I'm describing is the exact same problem they have in Florida and Texas, where they have supermajorities in their state legislatures too. They're not healthy for democracy in general. A healthy 2-party system, you see it a little bit when you have the governor and the legislature of opposite parties, but really you need the legislature to break the supermajority. You need, which is 2/3. So we need to get more than 1/3 of the minority party in there just so that we can have some honest conversations and people aren't beholden to, we're pretty strict, if you will, on how you behave in the House of Representatives where you got to follow the leaders, if you will. That's kind of traditionally how it's gone for the majority party. And I think we just need people to feel empowered. There's only 160 of us representing over 7 million people in the Commonwealth. And I think we need to feel empowered to make sure that we're actually representing all 7 million of those people. So I know that's a little fluffy and I know that's a little nebulous, but that is truly...
I feel you're representing your constituents.
You're right.
And I've been actually really motivated to hear everything you've said. You've not said, this is my opinion. This is how I feel. This is what I want. It's all about what the constituents are telling you, and you're representing your constituents. And I think you're doing a great job.
That's why I love my title.
Yeah.
Representative. That's what I'm doing. I'm bringing Pembroke to Boston. I'm bringing the 6th Plymouth to Boston. A lot of reps, unfortunately, do the other way around, with these policies. They're, hey, this is what we've passed. You guys have to comply with this. And that's not what our job is.
Yeah. Okay. Any secrets that you want to share?
Oh, secrets. You know what's a really good kept secret, I'll say, and I love getting to do it for those that have discovered it, is I am super available at the State House and always doing tours. I've brought up some incredible groups we're very lucky down here in the 6th. We have some incredible athletic programs in our public high schools. I've had state championship teams up there. I just had the national horticulture champions from South Shore Tech up to the State House to give them a tour, provide lunch, answer their questions. They got to sit in my chair in the chamber and sort of walk through all the murals and the portraits on the wall and everything. If you have any group, family, school break, summertime, anything, please reach out to my office. I love hosting people up there. It is a really, really cool building, and it's there's a lot to be inspired by up there. I know we talked a little doom and gloom today about some things that I disagree with, but I think that being up there is truly such an honor for me. Yeah. One, because I was put there by my friends and family and neighbors, but two, because it's steeped in a lot of history, and it is inspiring to see where Massachusetts has come from and the way that we have led the nation and where I think we can lead again. And that's why I love this community, because I also get to go to a lot of stuff in the district, like Eagle Scout ceremonies and, science fairs and things like that. And we are lucky. We are blessed with incredibly talented young people. One day I hope to be fortunate enough to have a family in these towns, in this state. And I don't want them to be one of the statistics of people that go away to college and never come back, because that's what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. We thought, with all this taxing and everything, the millionaires were going to flee. The number one demographic of people that are leaving the state of Massachusetts is 18 to 35. Mm-hmm. If you don't have kids in a school system right now, you're fleeing the state because it's so uncompetitive. It's so expensive. You can't start a business here. Our job market is shrinking. We're number 50 in job growth. 50 out of the whole country. We are the 50th.
50th state.
50th state in job growth.
That makes us last, right?
That would make us last. That would make us last. So, I'm inspired by the building. I'm inspired by our history. I'm inspired by our young people. But there's some work to do to make sure that we have to be a generation that leaves it better than we found it. My generation is the first one in American history that's not better off than their parents. The first time in history that the trend has homeowners getting older, average income getting lower, job rates decreasing outside of, the Depression and things. It's the first time in 250 years as we celebrate this, and we got to right the ship.
And I think we see that apathy. Sorry, correction. We see that in you must be a Gen Z. What are you? Millennial?
I am a very young millennial, yes.
Right, okay. But we see that in the youth of today, and we put it down as apathy. I actually look at it. I've got 4 children. So I look at it, and these kids we can't compete.
Right.
We can't. So why bother?
Right.
And that's the piece that I think is disturbing.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility as legislators and parents, actually,
right,
to make sure that rot doesn't stick in.
Yep.
Because that's bad for the country.
It's very obvious in the youth, but I tell people it goes beyond that, right? Massachusetts is very unique. We have the highest unenrollment rate, meaning the highest rate of independence. They don't belong to a party in the whole country.
Right.
People think, we're a blue state, so everyone's a registered Democrat. That's not true.
Nah, we're purple.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but we have over 60% of people are unenrolled in Massachusetts.
Crazy.
The Democrat Party is only about 30%. The Republican Party is just under 10.
Yeah.
But people confuse that because they think, the 30 is far to the left, the independents are in the middle, and the 10 is on the right. That's not what I have found. The 60% is people all over the political spectrum that are sick of the parties.
Yeah.
It is people that are sick of what's been happening in Massachusetts. They're sick of some stuff that they see at the federal level, and they say, neither of these parties represent me. Mm-hmm. The establishment does not represent me. All the government has done has make my life harder, especially since COVID. And it's not a left thing. It's not a right thing. It's the parties are doing what parties do, and they look out for themselves and not for their constituents and their residents. And that's what we need to change. And that's why I see that unenrollment rate as sort of a beacon, if you will, for the future, because it's people saying, you don't need to put me in a box. I don't belong to one group or the other that's going to say, I need to believe X, Y, Z. The days of ideological purity, I believe, are gone. Mm-hmm. People really vote, for their families, for their wallets, for their future success, and want the state and the country to succeed, and that's what we need to focus on.
You are exactly right. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to ask you, thinking of all the things that you've said today and what the listeners are going to be hearing, is there anything else you want them? Is there anything you wanted to say that you haven't had the opportunity to say? I've asked the wrong questions, or it just didn't come up in conversation?
Yeah, the biggest thing, we kind of danced around it a little bit, but the involvement is so important. I cannot overstate.
I didn't dance. I was, punching it.
You can be absolutely as involved as you can. Some of these bills, we were talking about the bird bills, for example, I wrote those with constituents.
Right.
That wasn't something someone called me and said, oh, what do you think about these birds? And I wrote something down. I worked with members of the community. I did the same thing with MBTA Communities Act. I've done the same thing. I have bills on 4-H and senior circuit breaker tax write-offs and all sorts of stuff because I understood what the community needs, but I worked with them directly. If someone listening to this says, hey, I have this idea about XYZ, email me, call me. I'm readily available. I have office hours that I try to do monthly, depending on holidays and things. I'm out and about. I'm at as many events as I can be. Bring it up. We'll work on something, and then I'll get you into the State House to testify. Like I said, I will walk you through every single piece. I cannot overstate how important it is for people to be organized and to be involved because it really does move the needle. I mean, I was alluding to that environmental bill that was going to potentially roll back some of those 2030 guidelines. All the environmental advocates showed up and the bill didn't get voted on. So if you're organized and you get involved, you can move the needle up there sometimes, and it's really important. Absolutely.
Well, bear in mind what we do, and if there's anything we can do to help you, if there's ever a need for someone to get up, and I love to speak.
Well, thank you. And thank you to the Chamber as well, not only for you for hosting this show, because like I said, it's so important for us to meet people where they're at. You can listen to this when you're going between the PTO and the soccer and the ballet, like I said earlier. Meeting people where they're at is the most important part. We understand that it's hard to keep up with some of this stuff, especially the technical things. So, Fraser, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the Chamber. You guys do some incredible events for our business community. All our businesses are so involved with the community itself, and you guys help bring that all together. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Ken. So thank you. I've got this script here. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to Ken Sweezey for participating, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. This podcast will be available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube with additional links on our Facebook page. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and at the Pembroke Chamber of Commerce. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the Chamber, please go to the Pembroke Chamber of Commerce website, pembrokechamber.org. Ken Sweezey, this has been a fabulous hour of conversation.
Yes,
thank you so much for your time.
Anytime.
And your contribution.